the network of the 1987 World Series, presents Monday Night Baseball. From Shea Stadium in New York, the St. Louis Cardinals against the New York Mets. And the Cardinals come to town with Jack Clark, who leads the majors in RBIs with 70. The Mets under Davey Johnson, playing better lately and hopeful of becoming the National League's first back-to-back pennant winners since 1978. In Major League Baseball in 1987 to this point. 6.5 games over Montreal and New York. Those two tied for second with the Chicago Cubs, 7.5 back. The Cubs have hit the skids in the last week. And then come the Pirates and the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm Al Michaels. Welcome to Shea Stadium. By the way, there is a power outage in Montreal at the moment, and those of you expecting to see the Chicago Cubs take on the Montreal Expos will see that game as soon as the power comes back and we switch you back to the Big O. But in the meantime, here in New York, you don't want to overstate the importance of a midseason series, but I think it's a very important series, in particular for the New York Mets. They trail by 6.5. They really cannot afford to be swept. It is the final series at home for the Mets prior to the All-Star break, and before the All-Star game, they will go on the road to play 4 games in Cincinnati, then a series in Atlanta, and 4 in Houston. So a very tough road trip coming up for the New York Mets, who certainly don't want the Cardinals leaving town 9.5 games in front. And what a turnaround for the Cardinals, who played so well in 1985 when so many of them had career years, and then some of them had the worst years of their career in 1986, as they were never in the race, and now they're back playing like they did in 1985. People like Vince Coleman and Tommy Herr and Pendleton at third base, Terry Pendleton, having terrific years. Let me turn now to Tim McCarver, and let's talk about the New York Mets, because you travel with them all year long. They are coming off a bitter defeat, maybe the most bitter of the season for them. How is this club likely to rebound from a loss like yesterday's in Philadelphia?
Well, there are some that are saying the loss yesterday in Philadelphia was primarily because the Mets were looking ahead to the Cardinals series. I don't really hold much worth in that. However, for the first time since Davey Johnson has been the manager of the Mets, for the first time since 1983, the Mets blew a 4-run lead after the 8th inning. Very, very unusual, primarily because of Roger McDowell. Roger lost the game yesterday, and I think a revision of the 1987 Mets story is that wait till McDowell gets back, wait till Dwight Gooden gets back. Well, as we said, McDowell lost yesterday's game out, and since Dwight Gooden has returned, the Mets have been 14-9, which is a pretty good record. But they've lost a half a game in the process to the St. Louis Cardinals. So everybody talks about the pace that the Mets have been on. Well, the Cardinals have been even a hotter team.
Both these teams can score, and they do it in disparate ways, too.
Well, I'll say the St. Louis Cardinals, of course, leaders in the majors in runs scored, and they do it in a lot of different ways.
So it's the Cardinals and the New York Mets getting set to have at it at Shea Stadium on Monday Night Baseball. Dick Stello at second, and Steve Ripley will be at third. And here's the lineup Mitchell will face tonight. Vince Coleman leading off in left field, and then Ozzie Smith, the switch-hitting shortstop. Tommy Herr is the switch-hitting second baseman. Jack Clark having a career year thus far at first base, batting 4th, and Willie McGee, rebounding from knee surgery, hits 5th. Terry Pendleton had a great week, and his average is up to .316. Curt Ford is the right fielder, batting 7th. Tony Pena, who came over from the Pirates during the spring, batting 8th, and on the mound, their winningest pitcher, Danny Cox, with 7 victories. The Mets, with the outfield of Kevin McReynolds, Len Dykstra, and Darryl Strawberry, and in the infield, Howard Johnson, the everyday third baseman, Rafael Santana at short. Wally Backman is back off the disabled list. He's at second base tonight. Keith Hernandez is at first. Gary Carter is back of the plate. And on the mound for the Mets is John Mitchell, and he's on the mound in good measure after starting the season. Smith at first, 2 down, and Clark hits it high in the air to right center field, and Darryl Strawberry comes in to make the catch and retire the side. where the Cardinals no runs ahead, and they leave Ozzie, and after a half, it's St. Louis nothing, and the Mets coming up in the first inning. Defensively, the outfield is Vince Coleman, Willie McGee, and Curt Ford. In the infield, many contend is the best in baseball, with Terry Pendleton at third, Ozzie Smith at short, Tommy Herr at second, then Jack Clark at first. The catcher is Tony Pena. And on the mound for the Cardinals is Danny Cox, who has pitched a couple of outstanding games against the Mets in his career, but for the most part has had a lot of trouble against
necessarily a low ball pitcher. What he does, he works the inside and outside lanes, and if you watch Pena, he gives one target when he's down.
Breaking pitch, and Doug Harvey saying it was a foul tip, and Dykstra is still alive. Pena momentarily disputing it, but Dykstra just making contact, and he's still in there at 1-2.
You could see Tony saying he never touched that ball, and it doesn't appear that Dykstra did touch the ball. As a matter of fact, Dykstra was headed to the dugout.
And that's where Tony and Whitey both feel he should be. 1 ball, 2 strikes the count. And the count now 2-2.
Now you saw Pena move outside the Dykstra on that pitch. That is what I'm talking about working the lanes of the plate. Danny Cox likes to stay away from left-handed hitters in that respect. Now he's moving to the lane.
And Dykstra hits a ground ball into right field for a base hit. And so the Mets get a break, as Harvey contends Dykstra foul-tipped the 1-2 pitch, and Dykstra is able to capitalize by singling leading off in the bottom of the first. 0-1 pitch is bunted by Backman back to Cox, who goes to first, and Clark can't hold it. And Dykstra's going to third, and he'll make it without a throw. And the Mets have runners at first and third with nobody out.
Be a double error here. It could be an error on the throw. We'll see if Clark could have handled it. Now that ball's got to be played, but Clark is looking at Wally Backman, probably seeing Ryan Sandberg coming down the line. If you remember, about 3 weeks ago, Sandberg on a similar play had to go inside the bag and sprained an ankle. And maybe Jack's thinking about that. I don't know, but it's got to be at least one error, and one error on the pitcher.
Fresh in his mind. And the Mets have runners at first and third, and the Cardinal infield is at double play depth with Hernandez at the plate, ripping one to deep right field, and gone. Carter at 247. That's the lowest average among the Met regulars. Hits one to the gap in left center field, but McGee can fly, dives, and makes a great catch. Willie McGee and Gary Pettis and maybe Carl Lewis make that play, and that's about it.
Willie may have hurt himself on this remarkable play, full extension. Look how low he gets to the ground before he jumps. Like a gazelle. Full extension. Oh, what a play by Willie McGee. Marvelous play.
So they get the first out of the inning, and Strawberry, the batter, takes outside, ball 1. Situation this year where he hit Chris Brown of the Giants and wound up fracturing his jaw. 0-1 on Santana. Johnson goes, and Santana grounds one to short, and Ozzie will flip it to first for the out to retire the side. But the Mets send 8 men to the plate, and Keith Hernandez hits a 3-run homer, and at the end of 1, Mets 3, St. Louis nothing. And that figures. Carter struggling along offensively. in the mid 240s. Right now at 246, as you see. Drives one to the gap. It figures to be a double, and the next thing you know, it's just a big old 8. Hit sharply, but to Ozzie Smith from on the grass, throws him out.
Tell you, if there is a hex on the Mets ball club, it's in their number 4 slot. Their cleanup hitters this year have batted only .233, so it's understandable that Ozzie Smith's playing him deep. After the McGee play, you see the long throw by Ozzie to nail Carter. In comparison, the league average for cleanup hitters is .290. So the Mets far below that, regardless of who they put in the 4 slot. They don't seem to produce.
Here's straw. Eric Davis injured his ankle in L.A. the other night. Jack Clark. And then you've got Dawson and Strawberry and Ozzie Virgil, all with 20. Lead it 3-0. Al Michaels, Tim McCarver back at Shea Stadium. It's developing into a very interesting race in the Eastern Division. What do you think? You're with the Mets every day. What sort of feeling do you get in the clubhouse with the team in terms of their feelings in regard to catching the St. Louis Cardinals?
I believe they were looking forward to this 3-game series with the St. Louis Cardinals. Some, as we said in our opening remarks, some even considered the Mets looking past the Phillies, looking toward the Cardinals. I don't believe that was the case, but to say that they were excited about playing the St. Louis Cardinals, I mean, after all, they haven't played them in about a month and a half, and that way you can pick up 2 games with 1 win.
Willie McGee starts things in the 5th inning by stroking one into right field for a base hit. And so McGee is 2 for 2. That's the 3rd hit off John Mitchell. All have been singles. And it will bring up Pendleton. 3-0 pitch. There's a strike. The Cardinals coming in tonight collectively hitting .286. Do you know that since the American League went to the designated hitter in 1973, no National League team has led the majors in team batting average? None. And it would figure because of the DH. But the Cardinals right now are leading the majors. And Pendleton draws the walk. So Terry goes down to first as McGee moves to second, and the Cardinals have 2 on with nobody out, and Kurt Ford will be the batter. And Ford is on. So on 9 pitches, Pendleton and Ford have walked following McGee's single. And the Cardinals have the bases loaded with nobody out. Pena coming up and Stottlemyre going to the mound. 2 strikes the count. And they get him swinging. Big strikeout for Mitchell. 1 down.
Well, I'll say that ball really dipped down out of the strike zone. And as we said, Tony, the most aggressive of the Cardinal hitters really goes at ball 2.
Morris coming home. Morris was born on Long Island in Freeport and lives with his folks in North Belmore. So a man with a lot of passes left tonight will stand in at an opportune time.
He had a lot of passes last year, too. He was 8 for 22 against Mets pitching with 5 RBIs. Made his major league debut right in this ballpark.
Johnson up even with a bag at third. Santana and Backman look for the double play. Morris is 5 for 11 as a pinch hitter. And it's a ground ball to the hole, a base hit. It almost hit Ford. It scores McGee. Pendleton will score. The throw goes to third, gets away from Johnson, goes into the dugout, and the game is tied. John Morris, a kid who grew up on Long Island and who used to go to Shea all the time to watch the Mets, has come home to Burnham.
Darryl Strawberry's throw properly went to third base. The ball came up a little bit on Johnson, but the ball really should have been played. It is a playable hop to Howard Johnson. It's off his glove into the dugout, and not only does the third run score Curt Ford, but Morris all the way around to third, and Whitey Herzog loves to squeeze in situations like this.
He won a game. First and third, 2 down. And the 1-1 to Tommy Herr is lifted to left field. Kevin McReynolds moves over toward the line and puts it away. But the Cardinals wind up sending 8 men to the plate. Get 3 runs, 3 hits, 1 error, leave 2. Perry comes in to pitch in the bottom of the...
Great ball game. You wonder if they can do it again.
This is fun, isn't it?
Yeah,
you got to
really
love it. You know what's exciting, too? What's exciting is that the baseball Cardinals did not play well last night. It's exciting because the baseball Cardinals did not play well, and they still were able to beat the New York Mets. The Cardinals did something they rarely do. They committed 3 errors, led to a few runs by the Mets. They trailed 3-0 in the game, came back to tie it 3-3. Trailed 7-3, came back to tie it 7-7, and eventually win it in 11 innings. Final was 8-7. For those of you who didn't make it to the midnight hour, let's go to Shea, where we'll pick this one up in the first inning. After a Danny Cox error, that's Keith Hernandez taking it out. A 3-run shot, Mets go up. Top of the 5th, sacks jam for pinch hitter John Morris, and for the 2nd day in a row, he comes through, slapping the base hit to right. McGee, Pendleton, they both score, and when Strawberry's throw goes into the dugout, Curt Ford scores to tie the game at 3. Top of the 8th, the Mets had taken the lead 7-3, but boom, Jack Clark, get out of here. High drive, way back, make it 7-6. Then the Cards tie it in the 9th. Bases loaded, 1 out, and 2 strikes to Tito Landrum, and Landrum fights it off. A grounder to the shortstop. He'll be thrown out, but Tony Pena scores. The game is tied. In the 11th, Vince Coleman, who had walked, stole 2nd. Then Ozzie comes through. The base hit of Jesse Orosco. Coleman will score. Cards go up 8-7. The Mets loaded the bases in the bottom half of the inning. Then Ken Daly strikes out Gary Carter. You gotta love it. Cardinals win. They go 7.5 up on New York, 7.5 up on the Expos, 7.5 up on the New York Mets. Final was 8-7. Now tonight.